So then we went to the airport to meet Prabhupada, and the airport is where I actually grew up. It's a town called Kenner, and it's the New Orleans International Airport, but it's actually in Kenner, Louisiana. So that was my neighborhood. That's where I grew up. And so I was familiar with the airport. I went there. All the devotees were congregating, waiting for Prabhupada to arrive. We found out he was coming on Concourse C. We knew the gate and everything. So a god brother came up to me, and I was Bhakta Vic. He said, "Bhakta Vic, give me your shoes." And I said, "What?" He goes, "Give me your shoes." So I looked down, and he had his dhoti and his kirtan on. I was dressed in karmi clothes. I hadn't joined the temple. And he had his dhoti, kirtan, and red cowboy boots. So I looked down, and I said, "I'm not giving you my shoes," because I knew I was going to get stuck with those red cowboy boots. So he, you know, they're saying you should see yourself a fool in front of your spiritual master, but you don't want to look like a fool. Anyway, so this devotee actually led the kirtan, right, and led one of the most ecstatic kirtans as Prabhupada was exiting the airport. But when I heard the gate, I immediately went down. I was the first one down there. And so I was the last one to follow Prabhupada out. So we're all anticipating Prabhupada comes. Immediately when Prabhupada comes off the plane, everyone pays the obeisances. Well, I pay my obeisances, and then I just jump up because I want to see Prabhupada. And he, you know, as a lot of devotees have said, they were surprised at his stature. He wasn't very tall. But to me, Prabhupada, his physical height really didn't, you know, stun me as much of his aristocracy. Just, he was so aristocratic, and the way he held his head and everything was so regal about him. So we're exiting, we're walking down out the corridor. The Mahendranath's leading this ecstatic kirtan. I think he was barefoot because he had ditched his boots. And as we're leaving, as I said, I'm the last one now because I was the first one there. I'm the last one, and I'm watching everything. I'm watching Prabhupada exit. I'm watching all the devotees follow him. And there was a policeman there, and I knew him. He was actually, his brother and my uncle were very good friends. And because of all the noise of the kirtan, he was trying to get the devotees to stop. But all the devotees were in front of him, and he was behind them going like this. So he looked like he was part of the kirtan. He just looked like he was participating in the kirtan. Prabhupada didn't even notice him. Prabhupada just walked out the door. And then once everyone was out, he was fine. He was over his tantrum, but he looked like he was part of the kirtan. So that was meeting Prabhupada at the airport. And then Prabhupada went to New Orleans. They had Guru Puja. And then he didn't give a class that day. He gave class the next day at New Talwan, gave Bhagavatam class. But that evening, he had a darshan. And that was truly, I guess you could say, my Moments Association. I literally was able to sit right across from Srila Prabhupada, closer than what we are, for the entire darshan. And as we were waiting to go up to his quarters for the darshan, Nityananda, who was the temple president, came up to me, because I used to ask a lot of questions in class. And so he came up to me and he goes, "Bhakta Vic, you asked the first question." Well, I was shocked. I didn't expect that. I wanted to ask Srila Prabhupada some questions, but I didn't really want to be put on the spot. So you know, there I am. I said, well, I better do it. He's asked me to do it. So we go up for the darshan. I remember Brahmananda was sitting next to me. And there was a number of devotees in the room. In fact, one of the guests was my aunt. And she was lean, she was older. We were young at the time. She was much older than us. So she had back problems. So she was sitting against the wall with her back against the wall, and she had her legs out. And Prabhupada looked at her and said, sit properly. Just like he says, you know, when you hear when Prabhupada's chanting japa and you hear it, sit properly. So he told her to sit properly. So her legs were like almost like a machine. She just then went into like the lotus position, but was sitting properly. After the entire darshan, after everything was over, this was her statement. She said, that was the closest I felt to God in my entire life. So she was actually fortunate enough to get Prabhupada's association, that one darshan. In that moment's association, it was, for me, it was like time stood still. To this day, I can't tell you how long it was, if it was an hour, if it was an hour and a half. I really don't know. It was because it was as if time stood still. And so it was time I had to ask a question. So I asked Srila Prabhupada, I said, you know, back then, of course, I had been visiting the temple for 3 years. There was that subtle pressure always there, moving to the temple. You know, the college education was really Maya. So I asked Prabhupada, should everyone move into the temples? Prabhupada's response was, what for? Very pragmatic. What for? And I said, to live here. And his answer was, we do not object, but who is coming? So often as devotees have gotten instruction or have gotten answers from Prabhupada, they reflect on these answers, these instructions for many years. So myself, I actually took that after some time that Prabhupada wanted me to move into the temple. So I actually finished my education, graduated, and I literally went from the graduation ceremony to sleeping on the brahmachari ashram floor the same night. And the next day I was out selling incense. But that's basically how I came initially to move into the temple. So then another question I asked Srila Prabhupada, being brought up in Catholicism, everybody wants to be certain about their salvation, so to speak. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't, you know, doing anything offensive towards Lord Jesus. So I was going to church, and then I would go to the temple, and so on and so forth. So I asked Prabhupada specific questions in relation to being Catholic, going to church, and so on. I asked Prabhupada about the miracle that Lord Jesus supposedly fed thousands of people or hundreds of people fish. So I asked Prabhupada, you know, Lord Jesus supposedly fed so many people fish. And he just very pragmatically said, that may be so. But he said, he pointed that on the table, Prabhupada was sitting like where you are, and I was much closer than this. There was a small table. And there was a big bowl of fruit on the table. And he pointed to the fruit. He says, why do we have to eat fish? He says, when we have so many nice fruits and vegetables, why do we have to do it? So very pragmatic, not condemning that Lord Jesus did that, time, place, and circumstance. He had to feed them something. There was nothing else, so he fed them fish. So that was one of my questions. Then another question I asked Srila Prabhupada, because I was pursuing that consciousness of trying to wanting the Krishna consciousness movement, you could say, to encapsulate Christianity or try to help Christians be more realized. So I was wanting to ask him about meat eating and the fact that the Pope, the bishops, they all eat meat. So I started my question. I said, Srila Prabhupada, the Pope, the bishops, they, how do you convince them? I was going to say not to eat meat. And before I could finish, he said, first you become convinced. So such a nice instruction again, because he could see the challenges I guess I was having with Christianity and, well, the word back then was surrendering, or at least becoming more devoted to Krishna Bhakti. So as the years go by, I think of that instruction. First you become convinced. And it's true, the more we're convinced, the more Srila Prabhupada was so convicted, so convinced of spreading Krishna consciousness. And, at the same time, us coming through from whatever religious background we had all these things in our hearts, all these doubts, whatever they were. But it's because of Srila Prabhupada that all of us steadily became more and more convinced of that blue boy, that's God. So that was another question I asked Srila Prabhupada. Then as the darshan went on, I distinctly remember there was someone sitting behind me, and he had a turban on. He was American, but he had a turban. So I don't know if he was practicing some form of Sikh religion or what, but he would ask questions in this vein. Can you speak to us of this? And so he asked Prabhupada a few questions, but at one point he asked Prabhupada, he said, can you speak to us of love? And Srila Prabhupada immediately responded, Krishna is love. And then he elaborated on that statement. Then, at some point in time, this gentleman stood up. Now, he was behind me, so I didn't know he stood up. Well, he was standing up to leave. And Prabhupada's voice during the whole darshan was very normal. It was like a steady voice. But as this gentleman stood up to leave, all of a sudden Prabhupada said, where are you going? And it just shocked me. It stunned me. I couldn't move. Prabhupada's voice was so powerful. And the gentleman explained that he had a previous engagement that he had committed to, and that he had to go honor that commitment. So Prabhupada, from that loud, powerful, startling voice, he turned to Nityananda, and he, in a voice that was filled, I can't describe it any other way, but it was filled with so much love and compassion that, he just said 4 simple words, and he said, give him some prasadam. But my voice can't duplicate the love and compassion he had. And I could see, just from that one, it just moved me so much. And once again, the realizations over the years, and that's all Prabhupada wanted, was to give us Krishna in some way. He always wanted to, in fact, in his books, he says, no event is complete without distribution of prasadam. But from the tone of his voice, I could see he had so much love and compassion for every living entity. And he just wanted to give that to us somehow or other. And he was going to make sure that every single individual in that room got prasadam before they left. So these are just simple stories from that one time frame, that little bit of time I was with Prabhupada, that I can remember at this point in my life. I've meditated on them a lot, and I've also, gotten a lot of realizations from it. And you could say that moment's association has sustained my Krishna consciousness this lifetime. I just want to somehow or other, help other living entities become Krishna conscious. And it's because of everything Srila Prabhupada has given us. I feel strongly Prabhupada's compassion when I see the when I see the video of Srila Prabhupada on his deathbed, translating Srimad Bhagavatam for us. Not only do I see compassion, I see so many qualities, but the fact that
it's okay. Take your time.
that he sacrificed so much for us. When I can remember one other thing, that he gave he gave so much to his disciples. One time, my cousin, who's a devotee, his name is Virkadar, he said, you can write Srila Prabhupada. So I wrote him. And I can't remember the year I wrote him. I believe when Prabhupada answered me, he was in Mayapur. So the letter I wrote was basically just a letter of appreciation. It was a simple letter. I wish I would have kept a copy because I can't remember exactly what I said. But I never once, I didn't even know Prabhupada would get the letter. I thought, well, this is a shot in the dark. Prabhupada won't even get it. It's going all the way to India by post. So I didn't think Prabhupada would get the letter. And then if Prabhupada got it, I was thinking, Prabhupada's so busy, he won't have time to respond to this letter. So I actually got a response. So I have that letter framed. It's at my house. But it was Prabhupada's response, once again, was very instructive. I didn't date my letter. So he goes, my dear Bhaktivik, I'm in due receipt of your letter dated nil. So right away, I knew I should, if I'm going to correspond with someone, I should put a date on it. In actuality, I think Srila Prabhupada was the only person I ever wrote a letter to. I can't recall. I mean, nowadays we send emails all the time. That's how we communicate. But I wrote a letter to my spiritual master. He answered me, and he thanked me, and he just said, he encouraged me to continue, reading and chanting, and gradually I would make some advancement. So that was so kind of him. Jai Anilo Premadana Koruna Prachu